one-in-a-century drought. And right next door, near the Mississippi, you could have once-in-a-century flooding. So it's swings that typifies global warming because, for example, if I have a pail of water and I add more energy to the pail of water by swinging it back and forth, the pail of water doesn't uniformly jump up or down. It swings, it sloshes inside that pail. That's the Earth. By adding more energy into the Earth via global warming, what happens is you don't get a uniform rise in the temperature of the Earth. You get swings. That is, flooding in one area, you get droughts in another area, and as a consequence, perhaps, just perhaps, what's happening in Bangkok could be a preview of what's going to happen to some of the other major capitals of the world, which are also built near rivers and near the seas and near the ocean. Now remember, there's no smoking gun. You can't say, aha, this flooding here, this drought here is caused by global warming. No, global warming is an average effect. It's an effect that's seen over years to decades. However, all the arrows are in that direction. We don't see arrows pointing away from global warming. All the indicators show that global warming might be possibly kicking in at the present time. Also, according to the United Nations, the population of the Earth just last week hit 7 billion people, and there's bad news and good news concerning that fact. Well, the bad news is, quite simply, there are more people to feed and more resources that have to be devoured as a consequence. In the future, this could mean water wars as water becomes more scarce. It could mean a rise in the price of natural resources. Already, we're seeing valuable metals rise in price because of the enormous demand coming from the consumers of China and India. Not to mention, food prices could soar in the future, especially food prices in beef and other trappings of a middle-class lifestyle. Because, hey, let's face it, a lot of people watch Hollywood movies, and a lot of people, especially in the developing world, say to themselves, I want that lifestyle. I want 2 cars in the garage. I want to consume tremendous amounts of minerals and plastics and metals, and I want that hamburger. I want that middle-class lifestyle that I've drooled about all these years in Hollywood movies. And the question is, what is the carrying capacity of the Earth? Can the Earth tolerate 7 billion people? Well, the answer is yes. But can the Earth tolerate, let's say, 10 billion people, all of whom demand a Hollywood middle-class lifestyle? Well, that's going to be a big question facing the planet Earth. But there are also good indicators in the news as well. Every few years, when the United Nations comes out with an authoritative estimate of the population of the Earth into the coming years, the estimates always go down. And that's because certain demographic factors are kicking in. The world is being urbanized. And as a consequence, when peasants go into the city, every child they have makes them poorer, while in the countryside, every child who works in the field makes them richer. And so peasants want to have fewer kids when they urbanize, because you have to feed them, you have to house them, you have to send them to college. It goes on and on and on. And they have a prosperous lifestyle as they become middle class. So prosperity and urbanization are some of the greatest contraceptives on the planet Earth. And even Bangladesh, a country where we don't have that much urbanization and we don't have that much prosperity, it's the education of women that's causing a dent in their birth rate. So to summarize, there are 3 basic demographic factors that are beginning to rein in population growth. That is prosperity, the education of women, and the urbanization of the peasantry. Not to mention the fact that if you look at the population of Europe, it's actually contracting. All estimates show that there could be a massive collapse of the population of Europe into the coming decades because of the falling birth rate. And in fact, in Japan, we have a demographic earthquake as 3 trends collide. On one hand, we have a tremendously falling birth rate, as low as 1.2 children per family. Second of all, we have an aging population. Asian women in Japan have set the world's record for longevity for several decades in a row. And then third, the lack of immigrant workers. And now I'd like to introduce our special guest for today. He's Brian Dumaine of Fortune magazine, and he has a different perspective on global warming. His new book is called, quote, The Plot to Save the Planet, How Visionary Entrepreneurs and Corporate Titans Are Creating Real Solutions to Global Warming. Now, in the past, some environmentalists have said that the problem is corporate America. They are the ones that have to be dragged kicking and screaming to address the concept of global warming. However, Brian Dumaine takes a different position. His position is that there are some visionaries. There are some people in Wall Street who realize, well, that global warming is a real problem. First of all, if it destroys civilization, they and their children will also be destroyed. Second of all, maybe you can even make a profit. A profit because green technologies open the way for new avenues of research and development. And third, it's a great way to save the planet. So once again, our special guest today is Brian Dumaine of Fortune magazine. The book is called The Plot to Save the Planet, and it takes a slightly different approach to global warming, stating that perhaps even Wall Street will eventually get the faith. The first question for you is, state your background, because the energy issue is so contentious right now.
Well, my background is that I've been a financial journalist at both Fortune magazine and Fortune Small Business magazine for the last 28 years. I got interested in the green movement about 8 years ago, and I noticed that there was a lot of innovation beginning to happen in this area. And I was curious about it, so I started covering it in the magazine. I assigned my writers to follow these stories, and it just started to really pique my imagination and my interest. And then what happened was that with Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, the film about global warming, scientists around the world started to say that the global warming problem is more serious than we thought. And what had happened was a lot of my friends were, very smart people were sitting around saying there's nothing we can do about it. They were very pessimistic. It's too big a problem. We're stuck, and I'm not even going to think about it because it's such a bad problem. And I felt that's wrong. That's got to be wrong. There have to be some solutions out there. So I set out to find solutions to global warming, and that's what prompted me to write my book, The Plot to Save the Planet.
Okay, well, first of all, let me play devil's advocate. First of all, why should we believe you, given the fact that corporate America has lied to us, has fought tooth and nail even the slightest change in our energy policy, even though, of course, they try to portray themselves as being green. So why should we believe any of the things you say in this book?
Well, I think the easiest way to understand what's happening is that a lot of companies and a lot of executives and a lot of entrepreneurs now believe that there's money to be made in fighting global warming. And there's nothing like the profit motive to change the behavior of corporations. I mean, yes, many of them want to, do good, and that's fine and that's admirable, but I think this is going to be the biggest explosion of wealth in the 21st century. It's going to create new technologies, new corporations, and probably, most importantly, millions of green-collar jobs. It's a way for America to get back up on its feet economically.
Okay, well, let's first of all talk about Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is a maverick billionaire. He does long-term financing from his place in Omaha. And some people think maybe that he's some kind of oracle of some sort, but tell us, what is this billionaire doing, Warren Buffett?
Well, Warren Buffett, who's one of the, as you say, one of the shrewdest investors in the world, is also one of the largest investors in wind power in the United States. He owns a utility in Iowa that's placing hundreds of wind turbines in fields, near towns, near